look outside the next time it rains. You probably cancel your plans, you stay inside, turn up the heat, and wait for it to stop. Getting wet is just an annoyance. We have umbrellas, waterproof jackets, and warm, dry homes. The rain is just background noise while we watch a screen. But strip all of that away. Imagine standing in a forest 50,000 years ago. The sky turns dark, the water starts falling, and it does not stop for a month. We think about early humans fighting off saber-toothed cats. We picture them hunting mammoths and surviving brutal Ice Age blizzards. But the fossil record tells a quieter, much darker story. You didn't need a predator to wipe out a tribe. You didn't need an ice age. All you needed was a few weeks of relentless, freezing rain. When the ancient world flooded, everything stopped. The rules of survival flipped overnight. And what happened to the human body and the human mind when the rain refused to stop is something nobody ever talks about. To understand the danger, you have to look at what early humans were actually wearing. They did not have synthetic waterproof fabrics. They wore animal skins. Furs and leathers are fantastic for trapping body heat when they are dry, but when they get wet, they become a death trap. Water conducts heat away from the human body 25 times faster than air. If you are wearing a thick bear skin and it gets soaked through, it stops being a blanket. It becomes a heavy, freezing wet sponge tightly wrapped around your chest. The water pulls the heat directly out of your core. Your body temperature starts dropping. You don't need the air temperature to be below freezing to die of hypothermia. A rainy day at 50 degrees Fahrenheit is more than enough to kill a strong hunter if they cannot get dry. So when a massive storm front moved in and the rain set in for weeks, early humans had only one option. They had to hide. They retreated into caves, under heavy rock overhangs, or into primitive shelters made of thick branches and earth. They huddled together in the dark. But getting out of the rain was only the first problem. The real nightmare was what happened to their tools, their food, and their fire. We take fire for granted. You flick a lighter and you have a flame. But starting a fire 50,000 years ago was an intensely physical, difficult process. It required friction, it required a bow drill or a hand spindle, and most importantly, it required bone-dry tinder. When it rains for a month, the forest turns into a swamp. The wood is soaked. The moss is soaked. The air is so heavy with humidity that even dead wood on the inside of a cave starts to absorb moisture. If your fire goes out during a prolonged rainstorm, you are not getting it back. You cannot start a friction fire with damp wood. But our ancestors knew this. They knew that losing fire meant death. Archaeologists found the answer when they discovered Otzi the Iceman frozen in the Alps. Along with his weapons, he carried a pouch containing a very specific, ugly brown lump. It was a piece of Fomes fomentarius. We call it tinder fungus. This fungus grows on the sides of dead trees. When you hollow it out and dry it, it acts like a natural thermos for fire. Early humans would take a single glowing ember from their campfire and bury it deep inside a piece of tinder fungus. The fungus burns incredibly slowly, completely without a flame. It just smolders quietly. When the rains came, a designated person in the tribe had one job. They held the fungus. They nurtured that single glowing ember for days, sometimes weeks, blowing on it gently to keep it alive while the world drowned outside. That tiny, hidden red dot of heat was the only thing standing between the tribe and freezing to death in the dark. But fire does not solve the hunger. When the rain doesn't stop, the entire food chain shuts down. Prey animals aren't stupid. Deer, wild horses, and boar do not stand out in the freezing rain. They seek shelter deep in the thickest brush or in their own caves. They stop moving. And even if an animal was moving, the humans couldn't hunt it. You can't track an animal in heavy rain. The water washes the footprints away in minutes. It washes the scent away, rendering hunting dogs or wolves useless. The sound of the rain hitting the leaves masks the noise of snapping twigs, meaning hunters would walk right into danger without hearing it. Worse than that, their weapons literally fell apart. Before modern string, early humans used animal sinew to string their bows and to tie sharp stone points to their wooden spears. Sinew is incredibly strong when it is dry, but when it gets wet, it absorbs water. It stretches. It sags. A tight, lethal bowstring turns into a limp, useless rubber band in heavy rain. So the hunters could not hunt. The gatherers could not gather because the rivers were flooding and the hillsides were turning into mudslides. The tribe was stuck in the cave. They ate whatever dried meat or roots they had saved. Then they ate the scraps. Then they boiled old animal bones to suck the marrow out. Then they just sat in the dark and starved. This is where the physical reality of the cave becomes disturbing. We romanticize caves. We think of them as safe, cozy, natural homes. They were not. When 20 people are crammed into a small rock shelter to escape a month of rain, the environment turns toxic. To stay warm, they kept the fire burning constantly. But deep caves do not have chimneys. There is no ventilation. The smoke hits the ceiling and billows right back down into the living space. When scientists examined the teeth and lungs of ancient human remains from places like Qesem Cave in Israel, they found something shocking. The teeth were coated in heavy layers of tartar packed with micro-charcoal. The lungs showed signs of severe chronic smoke inhalation. Our ancestors were breathing in so much soot that their lungs looked like those of modern chain smokers. They sat in the stinging smoke because the alternative was freezing, and then there was the rot. When you cannot leave the cave, the floor becomes a nightmare. It is covered in food scraps, human waste, and mud tracked in from the outside. The ground is damp. The air is damp. If you sit in a damp, unsanitary environment for weeks without dry shoes, your skin begins to break down. Modern soldiers call it trench foot. The skin on the feet becomes waterlogged, turns white, and begins to peel away. Bacteria from the cave floor enters the open sores. Without antibiotics, a simple foot infection turns into gangrene. People died in the caves, not from predators, but from the microscopic bacteria thriving in the damp, smoky dark. The psychological toll of sitting next to a sick, coughing tribe member while the rain pounds relentlessly outside must have been paralyzing. Think about how you feel during a long week of gray, rainy weather. Modern humans experience something called seasonal affective disorder. We get depressed when we don't see the sun. We feel sluggish, trapped, and anxious when we are stuck indoors for too long. We call it cabin fever, but that feeling isn't just a modern psychological quirk. It is an ancient scar. Your brain still remembers what the endless rain used to mean. When the sky goes dark and the rain sets in, your modern brain feels a slight dip in mood, but your ancient biology feels an existential threat. It remembers the smoke. It remembers the hunger. It remembers the desperate need to keep that one small ember alive in the dark. We look at our solid roofs and our waterproof shoes and we feel completely detached from nature. We think we conquered the weather, but we didn't conquer it. We just built thicker walls to hide from it. Underneath the concrete and the synthetic jackets, we are still the exact same fragile animals that used to stare out of cave mouths, praying for the sky to clear. History is usually written about the loud moments. We talk about the great hunts, the discovery of new continents, the battles, and the massive volcanic eruptions. But survival is mostly about the quiet, miserable endurance of the things you cannot control. The humans who survived the ancient world were not just the strongest hunters. They were the ones who could sit in the suffocating smoke of a damp cave for 30 days and not lose their minds. They were the ones who carefully guarded a tiny glowing fungus while the whole world tried to wash them away. The rain eventually stops. The sun always comes back out. And when it did, they walked out of the dark, dropped their damp furs, restrung their bows, and started over.